What's up, plant lovers? Check it out, my Clivia is in bloom. Well, today we're gonna be talking about Clivia, growing these as a houseplant, and how to induce them to bloom. Now, Clivia, or Clivia miniata, is the species that I'm growing here. This is from South Africa, and it's part of the Amaryllis family. As you can see, it has very similar foliage, and actually somewhat similar flowers to Amaryllis as well. Here you can see one of my Amaryllis. The foliage is very reminiscent, large, beautiful, strapping foliage. But they're a little bit different to grow, a little bit different to care for, and a lot different to actually induce the flowers than the Amaryllis. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to grow these inside, as well as the tricks needed to encourage these to produce flowers. Now, we're here in the beginning of March, in eastern Pennsylvania, zone 6B, and they've just started to bloom. Now, the reason that I love the Clivia so much and why it is one of my favorite houseplants is because it has this really unique, dense growth habit, this gorgeous clumping growth with these elegant strapping leaves that are this deep, dark, rich green. And the way that it grows, it just really retains its size, filling out its container, but really never outgrowing or kind of underwhelming either. A lot of houseplants can get kind of crazy in one direction, or just kind of stay small, but this has a very kind of full, unique appeal, and it looks great 12 months out of the year. So for me, this is a houseplant that can really hold its own as a standalone plant in a given area, but it also really works well with others. If you do have other plants that you want to incorporate it with, this is a wonderful option for that as well, because there's very few other houseplants that have this really kind of rich, deep, dense appeal like the Clivia. Now, in terms of sunlight, this is a pretty variable plant and it can really do well in multiple situations. I keep this one right by my southern facing window, so it gets really great exposure all year round. I don't have any grow lights on it because the southern facing window exposure is enough. Now, for my plant up in my bedroom, it's also in the direction of a southern facing window, but rather than being right next to the window, it's probably like 8 feet away from the window. So it's really just kind of in like a sort of bright room rather than being right next to the sunlight. And as you can see, both plants are doing quite well. However, this one is blooming and the other one is not. So increasing the sunlight can definitely help create those blooms. Now, before we talk about watering, let's talk about situating it in a container. Here you can see I have this Clivia. Let's see if I can get it out of here. Now, one of the most important things about growing Clivia is allowing them to be pot bound. So I have it in this really small little pot. This is like a 6 or 8 inch pot as a cache pot in this nicer kind of terracotta container. Now, as you can see, this guy is super pot bound. It is really wrapping all the way around. And that is really quite good. That is exactly what they like. So I will keep it in this container. After a few years, you can definitely increase the size of the container, but I've had it in this small little plastic container for the last 3 years, and it is doing absolutely fine. It really helps it to utilize the water that is available very efficiently. All right, so now let's talk about water. So for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, during the active growth months from around April until October, I'm going to keep it just slightly moist at all times. I really never need to let it dry out all the way like I would its brethren, the Amaryllis. I do like to just allow it to stay just slightly moist, but never sopping wet. That's really important. But once we start to hit the daylight savings time, for us, it's around the first week of November. That's when your watering regimen completely changes. You are going to stop watering at all. You will not water from around November 1st until around February 1st. So this year, the last time I watered it was November 10th, and the first time that I watered it again was February 15th. So that's 4 solid months that I didn't give it any water. That is the most important thing in order to induce these guys to produce their flowers. That period of stress and dryness is what will encourage them to eventually create these beautiful flower spikes. Now, so how did I know when to start watering it again? Well, you could just simply take that 3-month, 4-month rule and just let that be your determining factor. After 3.5, 4 months, give it some more water again. But the way that I noticed was that I woke up one day, looked at my plant, and the leaves were looking really droopy, and I thought, all right, that's my cue. This guy needs some water. And then I flooded it with water. I poured water in, I let it soak in a tray of water, about an inch deep of water, for an entire day, allowing it to really soak up as much water as it wanted. The leaves stopped being droopy, and then about 2 weeks later, I saw it was starting to produce its flower spike. And 2 weeks after that, the flowers opened, which is where we are at today. So that is the trick to get your clivias to bloom. They need to be pot bound. You need to keep them nicely watered during its active growth season. And then you need to totally restrict water starting around the beginning of November, once the days start to get much shorter. Now, in terms of fertilizer, I will definitely fertilize them during those active growth months from April till October. I'll give it fertilizer about once or twice a month, okay? Just a water-soluble mix, water it in, easy as that. And in terms of the right potting mix substrate, you want to give it something that is going to encourage nice drainage. A typical houseplant mix is great. Here you can find a nice recipe for something that I like to use for pretty much all of my houseplants and would work perfectly for these guys. And all of that being said, this is not a houseplant that I think is totally necessary to put outside in the summertime like certain other plants. But if you haven't had good success getting yours to flower for a few years, putting it outside in those warm summer months will definitely help initiate flower formation as well, okay? All right, so my audio wasn't working, so here's the voiceover. You can see the flower has finished. And what you do, you just travel down that flower stem and cut it off, unless you're trying to create some seeds, which I am not. But earlier we were taking a look at those roots and you could see how root bound it was. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you guys how to prune back those roots. You see how they're just kind of clumped up at the bottom there? They weren't even in soil. That's not really a good sign. So that means it is a good opportunity to cut some of these roots back, allow it to regenerate new roots, and that will also help to revitalize and refresh and regenerate our Clivia plant. So how do we actually go about pruning back these roots? All right, so I typically just will cut about the bottom 2 to 3 inches of roots. Just take some nice, clean, sharp shears and begin cutting off those masses of roots at the bottom first. There you can see, just like that. Yep, it's not good. And now just start to take away as much of that soil as possible. Since we are eliminating these roots, why not take out that old soil and refresh it with some new soil? Now I'm also going to go ahead and cut back a little bit more of those bottom roots as well, just like that. Super easy. Now from here, what we're going to do, we're going to fill back that original faux terracotta plastic pot with fresh, nutrient-rich potting mix. And once we get the right level of soil, then we're just going to go ahead and place our Clivia right back into that pot, just as so. Super easy. Now you want to fill up a little bit more soil on top, just so that it does help it stay nice and upright. Clearly right now the Clivia plant is a little bit top heavy, so we're going to ensure that all of those roots that were exposed are absolutely covered with this fresh potting mix. And while we're doing so, we're just going to gently pat it down, and that's going to help to stabilize our Clivia in the pot so it doesn't fall over. Now we absolutely want to make sure we water it in well so that all of those roots that we've just cut get a nice dousing of fresh water. And from there, I'm going to pat it in a little bit more as well to help stabilize and get it nice and strong upright in that plastic pot. Now, while it is good for the Clivia to be root bound, dead roots are not, and that's why we cut those roots away. Look at them, you can see they're squishy, they're white and yellow. That is a sign that they should have been removed and why we did it. And the last thing to note is that these can take up to 3 years to produce flowers for the first time. So if you are starting with a brand new plant, be patient, give it some time, and eventually they will grace you with their beautiful flowers. So with all that in mind, now you know how to care for your Clivia as a houseplant and to encourage them to bloom their beautiful flowers. If you still have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them below, and I always do my absolute best to answer each and every one of them. Don't forget, subscribe to our channel. We're bringing new plant-related content based on my experiences growing plants, watching, listening, and learning from Mother Nature. Thank you guys for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I'll catch you soon. Ciao.